It's the Blue Vote Cafe, a little bit of wonkish, a whole lot of fun. I'm David Schellenberg along with Rachel Oyster. We're the co-chairs for Democrats Abroad in Canada's capital region of Ottawa. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, David. Of course, neither of us has been in Canada's capital that much in the past couple of weeks.
No, not for much, but I was here for Canada Day. And
I was.
And then more importantly, I was here for the Canada Day fireworks.
Oh, my God. Oh,
Did you hear them at your place?
I was not in Ottawa, but we should explain to the listeners what we're talking about.
So on Canada Day, July 1st, there was a big storm that went over. And
a huge storm that caused all kinds of flooding in basements and closing of city buildings and ruining of libraries. An enormous amount of water fell.
So the big Canada Day fireworks, it was all set up and all good to go, didn't go off as planned, but they were all still set up and sitting there. And the bureaucrats, the politicians, whoever was in their infinite wisdom decided it was too risky to dismantle them and move them. So they set them off. But they didn't tell anybody that they were going to set them off because, as we now learned, they were too worried about too many people showing up to see the fireworks.
And it wasn't just that they set them all off, but they did it at 11 o'clock at night.
On a Thursday.
On a Thursday night in an area where people live.
Yeah, because there was a massive music festival going on. So where the music festival and Canada Day used the same stage and the same spots, the fireworks were set up behind the stage. So when the headliner finished, just before 11 o'clock, as headliners do at major music festivals, they set all the fireworks off. And it was a half-hour fireworks. They set off in 10 minutes. So
they just lit them all. They didn't. It wasn't like the fireworks show, which is programmed to have peaks. And yes, but it was.
It was just like really compressed. And I was lying in bed, just nicely asleep, and I could hear these fireworks going off, and just looked over the edge. And it was. I know Trump thinks he had intense fireworks. He might have had the most fireworks of all time, but what Ottawa did in 10 minutes was the most incredible fireworks display in the history of fireworks.
It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. And yes,
and you missed it.
I missed it, but I oh boy, did I see online the reports and the complaints and the counselors saying, this is a residential area. You can't just do that and not tell people.
And not tell people. Because it was too risky. Too many people would come out to see them.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Neither here nor there, but yes, it was a typical Ottawa moment.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, very Canadian. Like, here's our solution. We're just
gonna set them off.
Not tell anybody. Anyway, who's with us today, and does she know anything about fireworks?
I'm sure she does. Today, we're joined in the cafe by Jane Kleeb, who is the president of the Association of State Democratic Committees, which makes her a vice chair of the Democratic National Committee, and she's also the chair of the Nebraska Democratic Party. And Jane, we had the pleasure of meeting in Kenya. I want to say welcome to you here and now, but yeah, we should talk about that too. Welcome to the Blue Vote Cafe.
I'm so excited to be here. We love Dems Abroad. So many good voters are living overseas, but still have a huge impact exercising the right to vote on races here in America. So we're excited.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you came because we had our annual general meeting in Kenya. You came all the way out to Nairobi to be with us. And thank you again for doing that. And you were one of our featured guests. So I'm just curious to know what that trip was like for you and what attending our meeting was like.
The meeting was absolutely great. You know, one of those things that we do as party folks is we go through some procedures that most people might think are boring, but really help set us up for, having a strong platform and having strong resolutions. And so sometimes when I'm like speaking to people who aren't involved yet in the party infrastructure, I'm forewarning you, we have lots of Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah.
Even at first, the county party, the local party may not seem as welcoming because they might have a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They've been doing this so many years of building the kind of infrastructure that then allows us to elect Democrats. Or for, Maine's the perfect example, right? If Maine hadn't gone through lots of boring meetings years previously to make sure that they have rules for every scenario that might come up, they wouldn't have a process in place to elect a new nominee. So I love seeing that part of the party. I think it's really important. It's perhaps a boring side and in the weeds side, but it does provide the infrastructure to elect Dems.
Well, and do we pull you into the great debate going on in Democrats abroad? Do we keep Robert's Rules of Order? What are your thoughts on this controversial topic?
Yeah.
Do you love Robert's Rules of Orders? Or are you on my side where there is better ways to do it and we can move on?
Oh, David, you declared a side.
Yeah.
Oh, I picked a side. I think you're dumb.
Yeah. It's good to choose a side. It's good to choose a side and make your case. So we've actually a lot of county parties across the country have moved away from Robert's Rules for their general meetings. They believe that it's a barrier for new people to get involved. They will make a point on the agenda when they may have to move into Robert's Rules, right? So if they're voting to replace a central committee, or if they're voting to do a platform or some other technical thing, they may, move into that section. But otherwise, it is kind of a local meeting to share ideas and enthusiasm about Democrats for the next parade we're going to. Obviously, for the state party and for the national party, because it's so technical, there's no way you could move outside of that. But for local meetings, I get it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's kind of a hybrid, and I like that idea. But as you said, as in Maine with Graham Plattner's withdrawal, if there weren't rules, then you'd have to make it up, and there would be no way to ensure fairness and all the things that we want to make sure,
Well, let's just invent things called Jane's Rules that are more up to date, less clunky, and that I mean, I've been around Robert's Rules for decades. Like I get it, I can use them, but I think it's such a barrier for newcomers coming on board, and there has to be a better way to do it.
Yeah. I do think that the hybrid version is a good idea, and probably some that really know Robert's Rules are cringing, saying you can't do a hybrid. It's one or the other. But especially in our local meetings, when we're gathering to exchange ideas and to talk about, are we going to do this rally or are we going to do this voter guide? I think, you can break out of that.
I think, just as with moments where you have to go into camera to discuss things that aren't appropriate for wider consumption, you could have a rule that said if you hit a certain snag, then Robert's Rules come into effect at that moment.
Yep.
Or one of the other systems. Right. I mean, I think that the objection to Robert's Rules isn't necessarily, well, let me put it the other way. People who defend Robert's Rules.
Down this rabbit hole.
Yes, and then maybe we should move on from this. But I think one thing that concerns people who are not fighting to keep Robert's Rules, but fighting against throwing out the rule book, is that no matter what set of rules you have, you're still going to have people who understand them and people for whom they are new, who haven't quite figured out how to use them or what obstacles might be put in their path. Anyway, yes, let's go on to other things.
And we're back, and Jane is in a slightly different spot. Jane, where are you now?
I'm now in my downstairs because I have a home office at the house, and I live in a rural community. And so sometimes the internet upstairs in my office just does not want to cooperate. So the squirrels that make it going, somehow ran out of juice. So I came downstairs, and hopefully you won't see, we do have 3 cats. So I'll just warn people ahead of time, and children. So you may see cats and children.
That's quite all right. You'll probably hear my cat.
So one of our standard questions is where in the world are you?
Yes.
So why are you there? What keeps you there? Which is fairly obvious. And then where do you vote? Which less critical questions, I guess, with you, but still important to know. Where in the world are you?
I love these questions. So I am in Hastings, Nebraska. We're a small town of about 20,000 people. Our claim to fame, since every town in Nebraska has a claim to fame, and we're very proud about that. It's usually on the sign coming into the town.
Nice.
We invented Kool-Aid, and we always like to set the record straight that was not the drink of choice by the cult. They used Flavor Aid. However, we get blamed for it. But every year we have the world's largest Kool-Aid stand. For $2, you can drink Kool-Aid all day long and go to a parade and a festival, and everything is Kool-Aid in the community, including donuts and lattes and bar shots and everything. So It's really
You're making full use of your Kool-Aid.
we do. It's all purpose. And I
Did
love
you used to call it Freshie, by the way?
No, it was always Kool-Aid. Yeah, always Kool-Aid.
My grandma always called it Freshie,
Your
which I
grandmother
think
called
was
it Freshie.
Freshie, which I think was the drink. And I've never been clear of the story if Freshie became Kool-Aid or if it was just like a competing company that came
Maybe
along.
the Canadian
I think it was a
upstart.
competing company because I know because I've been through the Kool-Aid Museum. I know the story of Kool-Aid.
Okay, so you can answer this question, which is tickling the back of my memory. I believe somebody won an Ig Nobel for inventing blue Kool-Aid, or was that Jell-O? Maybe that
I
was
think
Jell-O.
that was Jell-O.
That was Jell-O. Okay.
Yes. So Kool-Aid is very important to us here. And we love it. But I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and then I lived in Florida, all over the state, lived in DC, lived in Philly. I was the head of the Young Democrats of America when I was much younger. I'm 53 now.
Cool. Oh.
And my husband was a young candidate from Nebraska. So that's how we met, and hence me moving to Nebraska and us growing our family. I've lived here for 20 years now.
Wow. And how did you get involved? I mean, obviously you met a candidate, but is that what well, no, you were already president of the YDA. So tell us about your political journey.
Yeah. And before I like jumped basically into the deep end into partisan politics when I became the executive director of the Young Dems. Before that, I was very much into politics, but on the kind of issue nonpartisan side. Right. So I worked on everything from healthcare reform and actually mental health reform and kind of youth voting, but it was all in kind of nonpartisan groups. And I ran an AmeriCorps program, for 8 years, both in Florida as well as in Philadelphia. So I got involved in partisan politics because the Iraq War, WTO, and then because I had recovered when I was younger from an eating disorder, there was a case in Florida where the Republicans were keeping a young woman on life support because of their pro-life values, but she was on life support because she had an eating disorder and didn't have access to the healthcare that she needed. And so that just really infuriated me. And I decided I can't only work on issues, I have to work on electing better people. So hence the jump into politics.
Wow.
And how much of the world have you seen?
I have actually been all over the place. I was a religious studies major in college, and so we traveled to Russia, Israel, Greece, and Jordan. So I had a good experiences while in college, and I was a foreign exchange student when I was in high school. So I lived in Austria for a year and got to visit all around Austria when countries that are named different countries now existed, as we know. And yes, that when I went to Kenya for Dems Abroad, that was my second time. I had been to Kenya I had been to Kenya with my climate work. And so it's a beautiful country, so lush, and they're doing a lot of really good work on kind of transitioning to cleaner sources of energy.
Oh yeah, we were very impressed. What a great trip that was. Yeah. So let's talk about the DNC.
Yes. Here we go.
Let's do it.
All right, get some Kool-Aid.
Let's do it.
I think, I mean, the question that most people have in mind is the way Democrats are being reviled right now and angry at the DNC for not doing more. And I know that isn't true. So I guess I'd like to know, how can we help turn that around? How can we counter the misinformation and disinformation? And what can we tell people the DNC is doing so they feel better about Democrats?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So one, I do think that there is blatant disinformation happening, and that is purposeful by groups that want the Democrats to be divided, because then it's easier to win elections federally, state, and locally. And that's a reality that we should all know. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's a reality. But there's also reforms that we have to do as a party, or we would not have lost to Donald Trump twice.
Right.
And I think as a national party, you have to absorb that. You don't blame the voters, you blame us, the leaders who are building the infrastructure, recruiting the candidates, and giving candidates support. So when DNC Chair Ken Martin got elected, he made a lot of commitments to do a lot of internal reforms, which we are doing. There are more state party chairs and vice chairs and other local people, not only on the coast, that were appointed to the different committees that are the inner workings of our party. the most powerful committee is the Rules and Bylaws. Usually there was about 1 or 2 state party chairs on that committee. And yet that committee provides all the rules that we have to abide by and that do all the critical things, like what are the early states? Again, that we as the states in those states that get chosen as, we are the ones who have to put on those primaries or caucuses. So there's now 13 state party chairs and vice chairs on the Rules and Bylaws Committee. It has totally transformed the way that we are deploying and creating rules. I go to DC next week. We're close to announcing, what those states are going to be in that early primary window and what that process is going to look like. So Chair Martin has done some of those reforms. Obviously, before that, Chair Martin and I were part of the reforms of superdelegates, getting rid of superdelegates. So we have a track record of that. The other big change that I think the DNC has made is we realized that concentrating resources in Washington, D.C., to kind of super PACs or other groups that then kind of create their own program, create their own infrastructure in the states for campaigns is not the way that we are going to win everywhere. And we really do have to play everywhere in order to pick up seats. So Chair Martin's given more resources to state parties. When Barack Obama got elected, he really depleted the resources that state parties were getting. They were getting under Howard Dean, the 50-state strategy, about $25,000 a month. That went down to $2,500. And that really impacted the number of races we won or lost, right? We lost
10%.
almost 1,500 seats. Yep.
Yeah.
Lost almost 1,500 seats at the state and local level when that happened.
Wow.
It's a direct correlation. So Jamie Harrison brought more money up, and Ken Martin's now at $22,500 goes to red states a month, $18,500 to blue and purple states, including money to Dems Abroad. It's the first time that Dems Abroad is getting a monthly amount equivalent to what other state parties are doing. So we can hire staff, build infrastructure, create election protection programs. So those are now we still need to do lots of reforms on, everybody complains about messaging, but I do think it's important. The DNC is an easy target for everybody's anger.
Exactly.
And, as a leader, you just have to absorb some of that, but you also have to make sure that we're working towards reforms.
Exactly.
But when you talk about misinformation in politics, that's not a new concept. I think part of the frustration is, why didn't we see this coming?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that we've been behind and still are behind the way that Republicans use technology. Whether you like it or not, AI is a part of our kind of, resources now, and candidates, have an ability to use AI to cut better turf, to do quicker messaging, to, vet mail pieces, and just all these types of things that some of the tools at our fingertips can utilize to make our program stronger. Doesn't mean that you leave out the thinking part on our part. You do that, but you can combine both of them. So why haven't we been prepared? We are literally in the middle of creating and standing up inside the DNC not only misinformation that we did of like humans and war room of communications and having better talkers on TV, but we're doing that now with the online kind of bots. And we never quite did a good enough job last cycle. And I hope that the systems that we're creating this cycle are better preparing us. But that's always the concern, is that, yes, the Republicans and Russia and other sources, other folks kind of outdone us in that area.
Mm-hmm. What about actively supporting creators? Are we doing any of that? Online creators?
Yes, we are actively. There's a whole arm of the DNC that is now dedicated to creating better relationships with content creators, and doing it in a real authentic way, not the way that the Republicans did it, which really allowed Russia to give all these people a bunch of, contracts, and they did whatever Russia and the Republicans told them to do. So it's a lot more, and we train our state parties on how to do that. Michigan and I think Minnesota have the best content creator relationships, and they've been training other states on how to build that up.
Oh, that's awesome. I guess I'm also curious to know, is there a way to, I don't want to say harness, channel, collaborate with, run alongside the energy that's being generated among voters by Indivisible, No Kings, the Black Power War Room, and the DSA? There's a lot of stuff happening, a lot of great stuff, but can we somehow translate that into votes?
Yeah. I used to say after the Bernie and Hillary divide, because I became a chair in December of 2016, so was very active in creating kind of the healing part of our party, right? Both at the national level with the Unity and Reform Commission, but then, locally here as well. And all state parties were basically divided, right? A 50-50 division.
Yes.
I used to say it takes two wings to fly in our party, right? Both the moderate and the progressive wing. But we've grown from that. There are more than two wings to our party. I'm beginning to think it's more like a dragonfly and maybe something even more that has four wings.
Right.
We do need to bring in independence, right? More state parties are following not only what Nebraska, but other states are doing, allowing independents to vote in our partisan primary. So they know that we want them involved in our party, not just in the general election, but in the primary as well.
Right.
The Democratic Socialists, obviously we have several folks that have been elected that identify as Democratic Socialists. I'd rather have those folks inside our party, not creating a competing party that peels voters away.
Yeah.
We need a coalition, right? And our coalition is way more diverse than the Republicans. And I like it that way. It's more complicated. It takes more work. But we have better ideas that are more reflective of America because of it.
Oh, it's far more vital and interesting and alive, to have that broad spectrum of ideas and positions, for sure. But it also does make it, much more unwieldy team to
It does,
steer.
And, I always say, look, Indivisible and the No Kings rallies and some of these other projects like Swing Left, I want them to do what they're doing, right?
Right.
Quite frankly, the state parties aren't the best people to be creating these rallies. Like,
Right.
I want the outside groups to be doing that. I'm focused on recruiting and training candidates, making sure that we constantly have strong county parties all across all of our states. And for you guys, it would be, country parties, making sure that those folks know how to use the voter file and are doing volunteer canvassing for our candidates up and down the ballot, that we're creating partisan voter registration programs, election protection programs, voter guides, vote by mail programs. There are structural things that we as state parties, county parties, and the national party are the ones that need to do that. And then outside groups get to do all those other programs. I often describe it as, we are the 8 to 3 school program, and those other programs are after school programs, but all of those create, right, meaningful change for the kids that we're bringing up. And that's true for us in contacting and connecting with voters.
Oh,
That's a wonderful way to look at it. I love it.
There's some sort of comparison in my head between Nebraska and Democrats abroad of people spread out long distances, similar beliefs, but just trying to make contact. And I'm wondering if tell us a bit about your experience in Nebraska and pulling Nebraska together. And is there something that Democrats abroad can learn from you way you brought that state together?
Yeah. When I first moved here, I wasn't involved in the state and local party. I got involved instead in a lot of kind of activist groups, and then did the campaign for Obamacare for 2 years with a union called SEIU, and then decided to create a group called Bold, which I still run. About 50% of our state chairs are unpaid. We're working to change that. But in the meantime, my position with the state party and the DNC is all volunteer. And so with my paying job with Bold, that was the first entry for me as an organizer to really work with both rural, urban, and suburban. We stopped to the Keystone XL pipeline. It was a formative experience, not only for me as a leader, but for those involved and for our state. It showed people of Republicans and Democrats that we actually can work together to solve a problem, that we can punch above our weight. All eyes were on us during those, decade-long fight. And I think I brought that same energy with me when I became chair, that we have a responsibility to be organizing absolutely everywhere, and we can bring people of different ideas in this unlikely alliance together. So that's how I've treated my organizing as, in the kind of climate world, but also in the party world, and really respecting people where they are, but also challenging them to move more forward together as a team.
Right. So any tricks that you can share with us on how to do that around the world?
Yeah. Some of the things are, you got to create real program, right? We can't just expect that people are going to show up to our meetings and know how to organize. So we got to train people on what it looks like to run a postcard program, run a vote by mail program, voter protection, voter reg, voter guides. Like, these are real programs that we have that we can implement in order to get more voters out for Democrats. And so that's always my, top suggestion to county parties, state parties, and for you guys, country parties, to create a program. Maybe for you all, that is the vote by mail program. That's the most obvious, right, for Democrats abroad. Or adopting a couple candidates that you're going to write postcards saying that you are, I think it'd be pretty cool, honestly, as an American, to get a postcard from an American who's living in Paris or who's living in Canada, in order to say, look, we care about elections. I'm writing for you from Canada because we really want you to make sure you're getting out to the polls for Denise Powell, the blue dot of Nebraska. So right. I think that's the most important thing, that you're giving people very concrete ways to plug in.
Right. And this isn't quite on point, but it's something you said sparked the question for me. Voting by mail, as you said, votefromabroad.org is our, we promote that and try to work it into every single sentence we say. But from some voters, they're stymied at the return point of voting because their ballots have to go by postal mail. They might live in a country that doesn't have postal mail. Is there something we can do, or the DNC can do, or we can do together to persuade every state to accept ballot return by email or digital portal? I vote in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I click on a little link. I tick, 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 tick all my candidates, and I hit submit, and I voted. It's
online. And I vote in Iowa.
It's incredible.
I have to put an envelope inside an envelope inside an envelope and find a stamp. I don't own stamps. and put that in the mail. And it's the hardest part is finding the stamp, honestly.
Yeah. It's remarkable because when we started running an aggressive vote by mail program here in Nebraska, we had young people call us asking where they buy a stamp. And to be honest, that never crossed my mind that of course they wouldn't have known that. And so
I don't know where to buy a stamp anymore. You can't go to the corner store and buy a stamp.
I know it's like a little thing, but I do think here's what we have to do. And this is the biggest complaint. The DNC engaged in a year long of focus groups to kind of make sure that our gut check of why we think what we did wrong is what voters are also saying. And a lot of it, yes, was correct. One of the biggest things that we heard from voters in those focus groups was when Democrats get power, we don't yield it. And instead, we talk issues to death. And we just, are worried about the unintended consequences. And, or the moderate and progressive Democrats yell at each other so much that when we have power, we waste that year or 2 years that we had control of the House, Senate, and the White House. So, and they were like, and we know that Republicans will do more harm for our families. Voters aren't stupid. But we also liked the fact that Donald Trump said he was going to break some things. And, people did believe that he was going to be able to move the government forward in some unique and magical way. Obviously, we now know that was not reality.
Well, he did something. I'm not too sure what, but yeah.
Yes. Turn the reflecting pool green. But he gutted everything. But when we do get power, which was to my point, when we do get power in the House, Senate, and the White House, we have to move forward electoral reforms. Yes. They have their own package, right? The SAVE Act, which is absolutely awful and would decimate democracy as we know it. We need to have a counter proposal to make sure that we make voting easy. When, universal vote by mail, universal voter registration, that you can register to vote the day of elections. And then, yes, do all of the things that I know Dems Abroad has been advocating for to make it easier for Americans who live abroad to vote. And then in my state, they're now talking about saying that if you had a child, right, which my husband would have been in this boat. My husband grew up in Italy. He was born on a military base in Turkey, grew up in Italy because his parents were teachers for the Department of Defense. Mm-hmm. So he did not live in America until he went to college, which meant when he was 18, he got to vote by mail. But according to Republicans, he should not have the right to vote because he never lived in America. That's the type of thing that the Republicans want to do. He was an American citizen. He has every right to vote, even though because his parents were serving overseas.
Yes, we have this conversation all the time with people. Yes, you are an American, you can vote. So go to votefromabroad.org.
That's right. That's right.
But how do you defend voting by mail when you know there's a certain there's errors are going to happen in the system? Like it will not be perfect. And is the margin of error by voting by mail bigger than voting in person? And is that the concern?
Yeah. I mean, when you say that there's errors with voting by mail, meaning like it gets there too late or things like that?
I don't know. The way that I just sign a piece of paper and put it in the mail and hope that it gets counted, I fully admit, like, Iowa is as wonkish of a state as you can get. And I believe in the system. I do, but sometimes it's really all I have to do is put this envelope in the mail and my vote gets counted. Even I get a little suspicious.
Nervous.
Sometimes.
Yeah. That's why we need more states like Nebraska. You know, even though we have a Republican Secretary of State, he's actually very moderate. He got primaried and now there's a MAGA, nut job running for his seat this cycle. But thankfully we have a good Democrat running against him. But Nebraska has a system where you as a voter can check to see if your ballot was received and counted, and all voters should be able to see that.
We encourage all our members to do that. Yeah. Make sure it arrives, make sure it gets counted.
Me making vote by mail even more secure than I think it currently is.
Absolutely. So we regain power, we enact voting protections for voting rights. What else can we do to make sure that what's going on in Washington is never going to happen again? And will we do it? I think that's one of the questions people have. Will we actually, as you said, not just circular firing squad, but actually act on it?
Yeah, I do think because we've had the last decade of experience with Donald Trump that Democrats and those in power, even the quote unquote establishment, since I'm part of the establishment and anybody's really that part of your state central committees, you guys are considered establishment. Right? You are now the establishment.
Yeah, I wish I was getting paid for it. I always thought there was like I'd have a nicer place if I was truly part of the establishment.
Or that there really was a smoke-filled room. There's not. I didn't get a cigar to enter the room. So, I think we've learned the lesson that we cannot do politics as status quo. And I also think we learned the lesson that we were recruiting in so many of our states very safe people, right? Lawyers, doctors, veterans. And I want all of those people at the table. I also want nurses, moms, dads, young people, farmers and ranchers, folks that are coming from all walks of life, because our laws require the perception and ideas from all walks of life. And we left basically 70% of America out of those rooms, which is why I always tell people, like, if you're not going to run for elected office, then run for party office, whether it's your county party, your state central committee, Dems Abroad, the DNC. We need people from all walks of life. So we're creating the rules to govern our party in a much more diverse way. So I do think that we've learned that lesson. And I think if you look at the crop of candidates that are running across the country, it does reflect America in a much stronger and better way than it has in previous years.
I think that's true. And speaking of people who've been left out a lot, there's been an active disenfranchisement of Black voters and a reduced opportunity landscape, for lack of a better word, for new Black leaders to come forward with gerrymandering and the assault against their rights. What are we doing to fight back against the stripping of power from our Black community?
Yeah.
And I should say, especially Black women.
No question. Black voters continue to be the most loyal block of voters for the Democratic Party. And we have to make sure that not only our state parties, but our national party continues to invest in community organizing in Black and brown communities, so they see us year round, not just the 2 months before an election cycle. When you talk to Black and brown voters, that's what they say. Whether it's Black, Latino, or other kind of Native American, we have this thing called the DNC playbook, which didn't get a lot of attention. You can go on the democrats.org website and find it. They actually did very good job of showing everybody across the country who's doing organizing to get voters out for Democrats lessons from those different communities. And those were written by folks from those communities. So it wasn't just a white organizing right organizer writing about a Black community and how to turn out Black voters. So we definitely are deploying those lessons. Now, when we do get power, we'll be able to be a check on Trump when we win the House and the Senate, which I do believe we're going to do. It's going to take a lot of work, but I believe we're going to do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
You know, we can start to do those checks. Now, Trump will veto a lot of that, but we can show the voters that that's the step we're going in and make sure that we have those laws ready to enact when we take back the White House in 28.
Excellent. And I will link to that playbook in the show notes for people who want to find it. Yeah.
It's a great piece.
Excellent. I heard you drop that, David. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, well, just because you just mentioned Trump there, and it's like, well, all right, let's do it. Do you think even the GOP is getting sick of him?
I love that question.
You know, you start to see that in our states. Obviously, in my role with the State Party Association, I talk to a lot of state party chairs, vice chairs, and executive directors every day. And you're starting to see more moderate Republicans beginning to see the end of his road. I do think still 26 is going to be a MAGA year, right? They will all remain loyal to Trump. And then in 27, you'll start to see people start to peel away because they're announcing for president or, you know, they want to join Democrats so they can win their seat back in 28 if they're in a more purple state. So you're beginning to see signs. And Trump does not have anything to show for his presidency. They passed the one bill. And the things that they do have to show are the dismantling, you know, of various parts of our federal government, including international aid, as you all know. And so it's not a lot to show, right? Corn prices are worse. Cattle prices are worse. You know, gas prices are up. Grocery prices are up. So nothing is exactly. No, there's not more money in our pocket, right? There's less. And that is usually a judge of how people, you know, when they're going to the polls, it's either, you know, is there more money in my pocket? Is my life better? Is my community better off? And the answer is no.
But he still seems to be able to blame others for those problems. And there still seems to be enough people who believe that he's being treated poorly somehow or other, and he's doing a great job, but he's being held back by others. Like, how do you turn that around?
Yeah, I think we have to keep on making the case to voters and stand up to him. And I think for the first kind of 3 months when he got reelected, we were all in this like shell shock moment of what Doge was doing because that wasn't part of the playbook, right? We knew what he had done the first 4 years when he was in office. And then comes this whole new thing of he's just turning over the federal government to 20-year-olds. And we had no tools to stop it because we didn't have the House and the Senate. And we were all trying to figure out ways to do that. I think in the states, our attorney generals in particular and our Democratic secretaries of state have been doing a very good job pushing back on him, trying to take the voter rolls or things around immigration. And so you're seeing Democrats really stand up and push back. And we just need to keep on doing that.
And so what are we doing to prepare for interference in the midterms? I know people are very scared that there's going to be significant, obstacles.
Yes. So a couple things that we're doing. One, there is this kind of online team that we are building inside the DNC about the disinformation. Two, we have the strongest election protection program and plans than we ever have. And so every single state party has gone through and is going through, we're in the middle of it, a kind of 12-part training series where we're training every state party staff members on how to deploy an election protection program. Because normally in this type of election cycle, only your targeted House and Senate races get an election protection director placed inside a state party. And so this year, we're really trying, even if you don't have a full-time election protection director, making sure that your staff at the state party have the tools to develop their own election protection program. We're also in the middle of
I've never heard that term before, election protection.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a thing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then the DNC's election protection program has created a coalition of lawyers in every single state that have access to a tool everybody on election day and leading into election day have the same access to a tool so we can start to see patterns, so we can flag problems, inaccuracies. So then those lawyers are going in and seeing those issues that come up, and they're either addressing them or then filing a lawsuit. And then we are basically, they call them red case scenarioing different possibilities that the Trump administration may do in preparing those draft lawsuits now. The other layer that we're doing, as long as we can raise the money, which I'm confident we will do, is we're creating this blue vest program. So we believe that Trump will put masked ICE agents in front of polling locations, especially in communities of color or critical swing seats. So we are going to train volunteers on how to counter that visually. So they will be in a blue vest. They will be the friendly face, if you will. They'll look for the friendly face that Mr. Rogers told us to do. And they will have tools and resources to help voters to lessen the intimidation that those ICE agents might try to do.
That's excellent. And I mean, it's much more amorphous, but there's also the concern about all the things that are happening before the midterms that will discourage people from even trying. And it's much harder to fight because it is more amorphous. But is there some way we can head that off or tell people, yes, it does matter?
It is shows like this, and it's talking to our friends, and it's going online. And we know that Democrats have voted in higher numbers in the primary. In our state alone, last time around, we had about 7,000 independents who pulled a Democratic ballot. This time it was almost 20,000.
Wow.
We know that voters are voting at higher numbers. Independents are voting with us more. And so we can't let them continue this talking point that people are scared to vote. We got to keep on being there for the voters and making sure they have all the resources. And Dems Abroad is obviously a critical tool, right? Voters overseas can absolutely be the critical change that we need.
Yeah, for sure.
And the critical swing vote, right? And so that is something that I know that we're spending a lot of resources and working with all of you to make sure that our state parties are helping with you as well.
That's wonderful. It's deeply appreciated. Yeah. David, did you? Because I do have another, but go ahead. I'm just
no. If we're sort of moving into the final stages, I just your thoughts on Lindsey Graham as we are recording this at this moment. There's McConnell. We're not 100% sure where that's going, but just Lindsey Graham as an individual. Did you ever meet him? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I was in similar rooms, but I never, got to go up and visit with him. A lot of my colleagues in South Carolina obviously did, and Chair Jamie Harrison wrote a beautiful post on his social media on Twitter about Lindsey Graham and making it clear, obviously, that they disagreed on just about everything. But, Lindsey Graham, as Joe Biden posted too, was one of those more moderate cross the aisle when it came to international relations until Trump got elected. And then he became a puppet for Trump like all of the Republicans have. My post was very simple. I didn't think I needed a big quote. Since plenty of other people were doing that. I thanked him for his years of service and for getting it right on Trump when he talked about Trump the first time, and quoted his tweet that he had, put out in 2016, that if the Republicans nominated Donald Trump, that we would get what we deserved. And we certainly have.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
For sure.
And Mitch McConnell, I'm sure you've seen all the funny, lighthearted photoshopping of people sitting next to him. People are saying that was a photo from years ago. I don't know where all that lies, but I do know this. If you have been out of office for the weeks that he has and had no communication with his constituents and staff, and that you still can't go back to work, it's time to resign. He has a responsibility. We as taxpayers are the ones paying him to do a job, and he is not able to do that job. And at some point, I hope the folks that reach the beautiful age of 80 decide that they have given their life to service and serving people in politics. And now it is time to go spend time with their grandkids, their great-grandkids, and their great-great-grandchildren at this point, including, Grassley, who's I think 92 or somewhere around that age. So at some point you got to call it good, right? I did my job. on passing the torch. And
no matter which
we need
party
that.
you belong to. Yeah, for sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So this is another change in topic, but do you have thoughts about how Americans abroad can go beyond facilitating voting to actually push for change in the U.S.?
Yeah. I mean, right now, right, as we're beginning to think what is going to be our Project 2025 document, right? What are the reforms that we want to see? I think you all play an absolute critical role because you know the issue best of what reforms we need to put in place at the federal level for electoral reforms. That's a big piece. I think you all being very active, of course, in candidate campaigns, not only making sure that your voters from your countries are getting their ballots and getting those returned, because that's a big enough a job in and of itself, but also engaging in some candidate campaigns with postcards, with phone banking, with text banking. But I think the policy piece is really important. You all are living in countries that policies that America enacts have real impacts on. And you know that best. And being able to give that feedback to us is critical.
Yeah, not to mention that we see best practices in places that the U.S. hasn't managed.
Yes.
Healthcare being the
Healthcare.
and gun control being the two glaring examples.
Affordable housing in many
Affordable housing.
countries,
But
yes.
that actually is another question. Most Americans want exactly the same thing. We want, So how do we bring the country together and recognize? I mean, I think we want the same things, but we blame different. Like the Republicans blame the Democrats blame the billionaires. How do we reunite the country around the things that we all want in common?
I think this is where we have to lean in on our Democratic mayors and our Democratic governors, who are the ones closest to voters, who deliver change for voters. So mayors, of course, in that critical infrastructure of roads and schools and sidewalks and parks and other kind of, real infrastructure that people see on a daily basis. Our governors, with things like property taxes and affordable housing and healthcare delivery and, opening up rural hospitals rather than closing them. Those are the examples that we need to show. And obviously Mandami is very good on social media. So people are lifting him up as the, exhibit A, B, and C of how you do it. But honestly, mayors all across our country are doing exactly what Mandami is doing too. They're just not as good on social media.
That's what Pete Buttigieg
maybe not as good looking.
Yeah.
He's good looking too. But that's where we need to start showing voters, right? Is we actually do deliver. When we get in office, we do deliver. And really bragging about that in a much better way is what we have to do as Democrats.
Good point. We have some amazing mayors and wonderful governors, no question. Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't asked you about that you want to share?
I think the other issue that we didn't touch on that I would just say voters across the country are focused on right now in America are data centers.
Yes.
And, I know internationally that is becoming an issue as well. Energy used to be kind of this issue that we would talk about is how do we cite it fairly? How do we make sure that people in the community are getting paid, that we're just not building big energy infrastructure and kind of letting all the benefits go to the corporation? But now that's data centers, right? And all these questions around water usage and are they going to use eminent domain, which is like a no-go for us in rural communities where I live. Like, we do not want you taking our land for projects that are for private gain. So I think as Democrats, we really need to lean into this issue. I know that we need some data centers, no question, but does Nebraska need 70? That's what's being currently proposed in our state. And that's true in other states as well. So coming up with strong regulations at the county, state, and federal level so we don't make the same mistakes that we did, quite frankly, with fracking in fossil fuel projects, where we allowed those projects to be built wherever and to build as many as they wanted to build, even if it was for export, not even meeting our energy needs. So we have to meet that moment. That moment is here right now. But also,
but what are you actually saying about data centers? Like they're not building these things for fun. They're building them because people want and are clearly using this. So what are we supposed to do?
Yeah. So the stance that the Democratic Party is making, and we're actually, working with unions right now on this as well, to make sure that we're setting out a set of principles. What we don't want to do is just say ban, moratorium, because that's not going to be an answer long term, right?
No.
So how do we build them in the most responsible way? And how do we make sure that there's transparency on who owns them, how much electricity are they using, making sure that they're not shifting the cost of electricity to consumers, the water usage, water testing, and then something called a community benefit plan and a decommissioning plan. So we know that data centers are going to start to get smarter and smaller as technology gets better. So we need to make sure that we're requiring them to tear down these large pieces of infrastructure once they're no longer in use. We didn't do that for coal. We didn't do it for oil. We didn't do it for gas. We didn't do it for walls.
We didn't do it for those massive windmills or solar farms either.
Yeah, well, we did in America. We did it for windmills and solar, but we didn't do it for any other type of energy. So we have to have decommissioning plans in place, and we have to have a community benefit plan in place because each community is going to have different needs. You can put a lot of things in a community benefit. You can say that people within 5 miles are going to get a yearly dividend. You can say things like there's going to be a community fund of $250,000 a year that the community gets to decide where it goes, not Facebook executives that want to just, pay out favors to the commissioner's daughter. Which happens, right? All of a sudden they're funding all these pet projects of commissioners rather than what the community wants. So,
well, we're a little annoyed that his names are on the Stanley Cup from Carolina, but that's a different story.
So I think we can do it responsibly, and we have lots of ideas to get there.
And does some of this apply also to detention centers?
Yeah, I mean, the detention centers, I don't know I'm sure you guys have seen that Trump basically, his business interests sold some of these data centers to the government, and he's making kind of money on both ends. And now, he's basically selling it to the government twice is an article that came out. Yeah. The detention centers, yes, should have also had a decommissioning plan. We have that issue now in Florida where they built up this massive, temporary detention center. And now people in that community and county are wondering who's going to be responsible for tearing that down because it's not going to be in use. So those are the things that we definitely do not have a plan for in America.
Right.
The detention centers are very opaque when it comes to transparency.
Yeah. And most communities don't want them there either any more than they want the data centers. Yeah. So many things to work on all at once.
Yeah.
Thanks for your...
But that's what we do as Dems. We take on...
That's right. Yeah, thanks for your hard work as a volunteer and your passion and your energy and for joining us today. This has been such a great pleasure, Jane.
Yeah, it's amazing to be with you all. And thank you for your work that you do every day to help Democrats who live abroad make sure that they get to have their vote counted. It's totally critical.
Thank you. Yes, if you live outside the U.S., your most direct lever for change is your vote. If you care about democracy, science, climate change, women's rights, if you care about the ongoing assaults against voting rights, especially those of our most loyal voting constituency, the Black community, please go to votefromabroad.org to register and request your ballot every year. Do it now. To find all our episodes, go to democratsabroad.org and look for us in the drop-down menus. I'm Rachel Oyster with David Schellenberg in Ottawa, Canada. Thank you for joining us for Democrats Abroad, the Blue Vote Cafe.